Hello, and welcome back to the sim. In this one, we're on the ground at Teterboro, and we're jumping in with the AAU2 version of the CJ4. Now, this is a fully updated systems, and we want to get our Cockpit Simulator CDU working with it again. So let's go ahead, jump inside, and get started. So here we are looking at the two CDUs, and they are completely split left and right now, which is awesome. And of course, we want to be able to use our Cockpit Master CDU. So here we have our hardware device, and we've now set it up with SPAD.next so that we can control the CDU. Of course, there is a little piece that we need to get first, so let's go ahead, jump over to the web browser. We need to head over to Demented Monkey's GitHub. He did release the CJ4 MCDU version 0.5.1. It will tell you under the latest releases when you go to version 5.1, AAU1. However, that said, it does work fully with AAU2 as well. He just hasn't updated the information. So you're going to scroll down here. You're going to click on this button here, CJ4 Zip, and you're going to go ahead and download that. Now that you got it downloaded, you're going to open it up, and you're going to see that there is the MCDU server. Now, this is the application which you can use to do a web-based server so that you can use an iPad or another device. Since we're going to connect directly from SPAD.next into it, we don't need to run this software. So normally you'd take this software, throw it on your desktop, and you'd run this little exe, and then you'd be able to open up a connection to it from an iPad. Instead, what you want to do is you want to make sure that, yes, it's the content HTML UI is directly below the Z Demented Monkey. And we want to take this and we want to drag and drop it over into our community folder. And then just in case, we're going to double check by double clicking that it's the content in the HTML UI is one deep. Some people go and they drag and drop this into the community folder and they unzip it here, and sometimes you end up with it actually buried underneath two folders deep, and then it doesn't work. So this is going to load this portion of the HTML UI on top, and then that's going to allow us to connect to it through SPAD.next. Now, of course, once you've done this, you do have to restart the simulator so that Microsoft Flight Sim will load this new edition in your community folder. Now that we've got that running, what we want to do is make sure our application is set up so that it will connect and be allowed to use the WebSockets. So we're going to come to the settings cogs. We're going to go to application settings and then to web. Under web, we want to make sure that the WebSockets and REST API is enabled, so that is on. So that's good. Then what we want to do is we want to come to the Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 tab. We want to enable fly-by-wire CDU WebSocket. And this will allow us to have the 8380, which is the default port for the fly-by-wire, which does require that you run the fly-by-wire sim bridge. So you must have that running. Then for the Demented Monkey mod for the working title CJ4, or now in this case, just the AAU2 CJ4, you want to use 8088 because this is the port that is hard-coded in the application. And again, this is a WebSocket port, so if you run the CDU server from Demented Monkey, this is not going to allow SPAD.next to connect. Or if you run SPAD.next first and it connects, then you run the web server from the Demented Monkey second folder. That's also not going to function because it won't be able to connect. Only one of these devices can connect at a time, and that's fine because the whole point is to use our hardware-based CDU. So now that that is enabled, we also want to verify that, of course, we did turn on support for our Cockpit Simulator devices. And again, Cockpit Simulator and the CDUs do require the complete edition. So you come in here, you go to Cockpit Simulator, you make sure that is enabled. And this is also where you can set up your default brightnesses. Additionally, one thing you want to keep in mind is for SPAD.next to connect to your Cockpit Simulator CDU, you have to make sure you have also closed and have checked your system tray to make sure you're not running the Cockpit Simulator connector software. So hopefully you already knew, just like other devices, you can only run one piece of software to talk to them because it is a serial type interface device. Okay, so now that we have configured this, if it was not enabled, of course, you're going to need to close SPAD.next and relaunch it. When you come to the panel page, if the CDU is connected and not being interfered with by the Cockpit Simulator software because you've closed it, then when you come in here, it's going to be nice and easy and you will see everything right in front of you. If this is not connected, then it's probably because you were running that, in which case you got to close SPAD.next, go ahead, close off that Cockpit Simulator and run it again. Also note, you can disconnect from here and you can reconnect from here as well if you are having issues, and try that. You have a show log, which also will show you that it is initted successfully and that it's connected and talking to it. So again, you have some tools there for you. So I have my profile for my working title CJ4 from before. I've actually updated the naming, used to be 12.12. Now I've renamed it AAU2. So inside of this profile, I will click on my CDU button. I'm going to go to Online Snippets and I'm going to click on it. When the interface opens up, you're going to want to keep in mind that here on the left-hand side has only for current aircraft. Only for current aircraft means the things that were linked to it when I published this snippet. Now, I only have the one default livery, and so that would be a problem for other people. So if you're using different liveries, that will recognize as effectively a different plane. And so what you may want to do is uncheck only for current aircraft when you perform the search. You're going to click on Complete Device. And then what you can do is you can look through all of the CDU devices that have been published. So if we come through here and we sort by ID, it's actually going to be the newest one because it's the most recent one that I published. So 9441, and yes, I can click on this little eyeball here, which is going to open up a preview, and I can even see all the things that have been mapped to the CDU, so I can preview them ahead of time if I so choose. So this guy here is got the AAU2 Cockpit Simulator CDU in it. You would double click on it, and do you want to replace all events? You would click on yes. So we're going to go ahead, click on yes, and now we've replaced all of our pages. First things that we want to do when we look at our physical hardware, this button on the upper left, the line select one key, I use this one a lot so that if I'm on any other page, no matter what, when I hold that line select key down, it will come back to the home menu. So when we look inside of SPAD.next, we'll see that on the line select one key, and so what's happening here is it's using the condition and it's checking if any CDU is available for the number one CDU or the left side. And if SPAD returns a value of 1, yes, there is a left CDU, it will allow you to see it and it will allow you to function control it. So with that button also goes the display information. You will see that row 1, segment 1, and the segments are left side, right side, split down the middle. And you can have an entire row if you want. So for example, here in row 14, we wanted the entire row blanked out whenever it switched to this page. So row 1, segment 1, we're going ahead and we're displaying the segment and we're just putting some static text. If nothing was there, I would hit on Add Event. So while clicked on the display, you can now see that we can map things to the LEDs, so your message LEDs and other items. And you can go to the individual rows and you can map. So row 1 is the entire row and the text can stretch from left to right across the entire display. Segment 1 will be cut off on the left-hand side and segment 2 would be on the right-hand side. Segment 1 is going to automatically justify to the left, while segment 2 is automatically going to justify the text to the right. So very easy to use. Here you can see those default conditions. If CDU 0 is available, you will see that the text will write select CDU left. So that's the text I put in. Here you can see that the center CDU, which would be CDU underscore 2, because everything's 0 based, that is not available, therefore the text is not displayed. Now we've got a fixed display for custom display, and that's row 9, segment 1. And then as we come down, we can go to the next row, and here on the segment 2 for row 3, which is right here, we've created an expression. The reason for this expression is I wanted to apply control information for the display, and I also wanted to see the current value. This also allowed me to show you how you can use the text lines to change data. So each one of those displays or those segments is just like a window on any other device. So on an MCP or on a radio panel or on the multi-panel where you can change what the display is showing you. So in this, we've set it up that anytime my display brightness for my device changes, right? So anytime the display brightness is changed, then it will update. And so on any change, we want any change because then it's any value. Then what we're doing is we're changing the display, but we're using an expression. And the reason for the expression is we wanted to put some words. So we have to start with a single, like an apostrophe, a single quote. Then we can put in some text. This is telling it that this is going to be static text. So we have DSP, and then we have our opening bracket, and right away we're closing it off with the end quote. So this is text. Now we're adding to that text. We hit add data, and then we went ahead and we got our display brightness data. Now this doesn't need the quotes around it. And then right after that, we wanted to add the close bracket so that we would end up with DSP, bracket, the numbers, and a bracket. Notice how there's no spaces. If I wanted a space between here, I would need a space. If I wanted a space after the bracket, I would need a space. If I wanted a space before this bracket, I would need to put the space inside of the bracketed text. We can hit the validate, and it will show for us the current value. And this is what will now be displayed. So we click OK, and we now have our text that is going to update. And of course, we made a change, so we hit save. When you don't map anything to the display, then it's going to use the index that it's on to populate the information. So the SPAD menu uses index 99, and that's what goes with the default menu. When we go to left page 1, you'll notice the display is not updating, and that is because we didn't actually press the button that changes the page and changes the index. So when we look at this button, as we were looking before, you'll see that yes, pressing the button when it's available with a short press is going to switch to the page titled left page, and it's going to set the device to the index of 0. Again, everything is 0 based, so the first page is, well, 0. Now, at any time, even if I am on this page but there's something messed up with the index, I've put this on every one of my upper left line select keys. So when you hold it for a long time, it will set the index to 99 and it will switch to the SPAD menu. So when we press the button, for example, to switch over here, now when we press and hold, it is going to switch back. You're also going to see that we added a profile loaded element. If I wanted to add an event, I go to add event. I have my press short, my press long, my released, my held. So sometimes with certain buttons and certain airplanes, I need a button pressed and a button released. Under here though, under add event, you're also going to find you could add scripts, and there are system events. So these are scripts with very specific information. On profile load, which is what we used, we want to force it to index 99 and jump to the main SPAD menu. That way, no matter what screen I'm on, it will automatically on profile load or on a long press bring us back to this screen. So these ones are the standard display events that come with the default mapping of the CDU, and so I've left them there for future purposes. Now with the ATR, because the ATR doesn't output any data to the screens, I have a custom setup that will use these buttons for left and right, and then of course give us a page that remaps to the ATR. And I thought I would apply that similar approach here in the CJ4 for now to be a little bit different, because I actually still want the CDU page to be remapped, but I want the display to follow a different index. So this is where it's a little bit different. With another device where I want this to also have different page displays, I actually would set the index to match the page. So here, because my left CDU is page 5, normally what would happen is here, this would say jump to that page, which is on page 5 and what I named it, but then I'd have my index set to 4, 5 minus 1. So that way, any custom displays and custom information I was putting on that page would show up. But here, I'm trying to trick it. I want it to go off and pull in the actual left CDU information and automatically map that for me, but I want to use a different set of buttons. So we copied this button, pasted it, I deleted the condition since I don't need it, and I renamed the display here to CJ4 CDU left. So of course we did that on the page by adding a row 11 segment 1, and we put the text CJ4 CDU left. So on the button, we're going to switch to the CDU page, but we're going to keep our index to 0. So it's going to bring in the left display, but go to our custom page. If we go ahead and we use the button to switch to the custom page, when it comes up, we now have our display. And like I said, it's now going to the left CDU page. Only unlike before where this button said CDU line select 1. So when we go back, if we were to say go to the right CDU, you'll see it jumps to the right CDU. But here it's using the default send CDU key L1. However, when we go to our CDU left page, of course here, instead of the default key, we've replaced it with CJ4 FMC_1 for index 1, button L1. So we're putting in all of the H events manually. So this is very helpful because now I've got everything mapped directly to the H events. Also, this allows me to kind of maybe map things a little bit differently without messing with the standardized default. And of course, by using the little trick here on the home screen, it still gets the display information because we told it go to index 0. On the SPAD menu screen, if we use the CJ4 CDU right, you'll see we're going to the special CJ4 right CDU page, but we're changing the device index to a 1. When we come up to the right side, you're going to notice that we added a brightness control to the text on the upper right. So from the home page, you can see that segment 1, we have the SPAD.next menu identifier. But on segment 2, I put brightness control as some fixed text. So brightness control. Again, I added event. I went to row 1. I went to segment 2. It popped up and it allowed me, and I said, well, I'm going to put static text. I could have put a data value, static text. I could have even put an expression like we've shown already. So we had the static text for display control. On the first button, we've gone ahead and we've got it set so that on a short press, this will set my local variable, which I created called brightness selector. So again, in setting this, that was an add action, change data value. And to create it, I made a new local variable and I named it, I set it to a number, I set it to no decimal, and I gave it a default value of 0. Then we're setting it to 0 with this short button press. What that does is it allows me to assign my brightness control keys, so our brightness control keys here, to be able to control the display brightness. Then the button below next to the key brightness, that will allow me to change it to control it. On each one of these, you'll see that there is also a long press. So this was a way for me to quickly just set it to 75. And so if I hold the button down, it will set it to a value of 75. And then you'll notice we can switch to the key select. And now you'll see that the text has changed as well. So when we look at this button, we've now got it that it sets on a short press the brightness selector to a 1. On a long press, it's going to set that key brightness value to a 75. So again, if we hold it for a long press, changes the key brightness to 75. But while this shows that key control is active, when I press the brightness, I can now turn the key brightness down. When we click on this, the text for active and which one is active, which is controlling the brightness, is changing. When we look at the display again, we had added a text display for row 4 segment 2 and row 6 segment 2. That way we can create an active. Whenever the brightness selector value changes to a 0, it's going to put active up under the display. So that's row 4 segment 2. If the selector is equal to a 1, it's going to put active under row 6 segment 2. So the row right below key. However, I need to make the other one go out. So whenever it switches to a 1, row 4 segment 2 is going to be blank. So I'm still putting text, but it's empty. Whenever the selector is set to a 0, row 6 segment 2 is going to display blank. For the brightness selector, we added conditions. So when the button is pressed and the selector is 0, it's going to affect the display brightness by 5. When the local variable is set to a 1 and it's pressed, it is going to control the key brightness by 5. When it's held, it's going to change the value by 5, but in a held state. So that way it will repeat. So if we just hold brightness down, you'll see it quickly ramps up and quickly ramps down. So that explains how we're doing the home page and how we're actually controlling and customizing data fields and data display elements on the segments. So now let's jump over to our CJ4 pages because this is where we've done our custom assignments. While we're at it, let's go ahead and jump back into the sim and we'll see these side by side. On the upper left button, the INIT REF button, I have mapped this the performance key. So when you press this button, that will take you to the performance menu. If you come down to the menu button, you'll see that we're going to the IDX page. It lines up with menu, and this is the IDX or the menu index page. Right below the IDX page is the tune page, and since there is no real N1 limit page, I decided that I was going to map the N1 limit. So then we've got our previous and next, so obviously it would make sense that these would map to the previous and next flight plan, and route seem to be the same thing, so route goes to flight plan. Legs will map to legs, since that makes sense. And for fix, that's for me, I'm doing the direct to. So fix, direct to, that kind of makes sense to map to the direct to a fix. So route, legs, direct to. For departure and arrival, we have a key called departure arrival, so perfect, that maps out nicely. Along the top, you had display menu, MFD advanced, and MFD data. So I decided to map them 3 in a row. So climb will go to the display menu, cruise we go to MFD advanced menu, and descent will go to the MFD data. Hold has nothing mapped to it because there is no more buttons for me to map. And then progress will take you to the messages page. Our brightness will still control the screen brightness, and then of course you have your execute button, which maps to your execute button. Then when you come along all of the numbers, we have all of the digits. So whether it's a 1, a 2, a 3, all of the digits. We've got the decimal, we've got the 0, we've got the plus minus key for adding the minus. We've got the Z, we've got the space. We have the delete key. So because clear and delete are the same key, the functionality works the same. So we put it on both, that if you hold it, it will send the clear long press. So that does the same thing as if it was a delete key. We added them to be identical. So both short and hold. So since there is only one delete/clear key. So yeah, that pretty much maps 1-to-1. So it's very easy to go ahead and jump into our root. We're currently at KTEB, so KTEB. We're going to go ahead and put in the root. And you'll see that the scratch pad is going to show the extra information because we are short something. But the moment you start typing, it will flip back to show us the page. So this is where SPAD did a really neat and smart thing, right? So right now the scratch pad is empty. And so since the scratch pad's empty, but it knows there's characters in the message field in the lower display, it does a swap for us really quick. So here we could hit execute, and of course that brings it. And you'll notice now that the message field cleared out, it goes back to showing us the brackets. So now we want to go to, say, CYOW, my home airport. We add that, and of course execute, and execute lights up. So the execute LED on the screen will map here to the execute. So again, every time you press that, away it goes. Even though there's one line on the Boeing CDU less than on this one from the CJ4, SPAD.next did a really good job of implementing that and how that functions. Well, looks like the rain's coming in and the weather's getting bad, so we better get going and head off to Ottawa. If you made it this far, please hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't. Come along in the next one. As always, thanks for watching. Have a great day.